I heard that Father Christmas, who particularly likes YouTube, has subscribed to this podcast on YouTube. I'm sporting my Christmas jumper, so I'm starting to get into the Christmas spirit a little bit.
They're not only listening to us, but they're changing their strategies based on what we talk about, which is it's really flattering.
Sorry, can we see the Christmas pudding again, please? Can we just?
Yeah, well, they're upside down this way, but there you go. What would we say to ourselves if we could, go back and have a conversation with who we were, 20 or 30 years ago?
He said, right. He said, in the next 2 weeks, I want you to report back to me privately and tell me whether it's the CTO or the team. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of our second series of the CTO Lens. I'm David Crawford, and I'm joined by the wonderful Sophie Valentine. And we're going to take you through for the next 40, 50 minutes or so. We're going to talk to you a little bit about what's happening in the technology news at the moment. We'll focus into a section in this particular week that is talking about sitting down with your younger self and maybe some of the advice you might give each other. We'll, of course, do the mid-episode game. Luke will join us for that, and that'll be absolutely great. And then we'll finish with the Disaster Diaries. So, Sophie, I feel like in our third one, we deserve a Christmas present, Sophie. I think we should appeal, you and I, as co-hosts, should appeal to anybody listening to this to become a subscriber to this podcast as a Christmas present to you and I for the effort we've been making. Does that feel good?
I agree. And it's weird you mention it because that is what I wrote in my letter to Father Christmas that I sent off earlier this month. So we're on the same wavelength. I think it's a fantastic, it's the best part is that it's a gift to us. It's a gift to London tech leaders, and it's a gift to you because if you like and subscribe, you'll be the first to hear when we release new episodes. The more you connect with London tech leaders, the more you learn about our events, get more involved, and there's so much to be had from the community. So it's a win-win, I would say.
Also, it is a particular gift for people because I heard that Father Christmas, who particularly likes YouTube, has subscribed to this podcast on YouTube. So, if you subscribe, you'll be in the same kind of camp as Father Christmas. It's all good, right? Of course, you can go on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Please please subscribe, please tune back in. If we can get up to 100, that will be a marvelous Christmas present for the CTO Lens. All right, what have we been up to this week, Sophie? Where have you been? Anywhere nice? Have you travelled anywhere? Are you sitting in your room? Are you crying yourself to sleep at night? What's going on?
Poignant question. No, I have not been anywhere exciting. I have been in grey London, and I am missing having had a few travels earlier this year. But I've spent a lot of this week, and I can't say too much about it because I am under NDA, thinking and looking into all of the really promising use cases for technology, whether that's, digital or AI in, healthcare and life sciences. So I'm intellectually fulfilled if, lacking in a little bit of vitamin D this week. What about you? What have you been up to?
I want to know what's under your NDA now, but never mind. I have been, since we last spoke, I finished off my week in Ireland. I'll be back there again this week, just for the last time before Christmas. I've been doing a number of different things, but professionally, just kind of ticking along, a little bit of work. I missed out on a big Christmas meetup with some ex-Sky colleagues this week. There was a big Christmas party sort of get together in a pub in London, and I couldn't go because I was in Ireland, so I was a bit miserable about that. But yeah, no, everybody's getting together and meeting up and having beers and drinks and stuff like that. So that's all good. And as you can see, I've got a nice little Christmas tree here. I'm sporting my Christmas jumper. So I'm starting to get into the Christmas spirit a little bit. There's a bit more work to be done before then, but I bought a turkey crown yesterday. So that was good. We've got quite a quiet Christmas this year. Me and the current Mrs. Crawford are going to be on our own for the first time ever on Christmas Day. And everybody who I tell that is very upset for us, and we're not. So we love our family, and we love to have a big and busy house at Christmas time. And before and after Christmas and for New Year's, we absolutely will. There's loads of people coming. It's absolutely fine. But on the big day itself, our grown-up children have gone to their various in-laws, and my parents have gone down to my brother and sister in their families in London. And so we are going to visit the King. We're going to drive to Sandringham, which is about an hour and a quarter away from where we live. And on Christmas Day, the King and the Queen and their family, their extended family, all go to church in the grounds of Sandringham, where they stay for Christmas. And the members of the general public who are in the know, and we happen to be one of them, we've been before, not on Christmas Day, but we've been other times, is you can go and stand outside and they hand out, carol sheets, and you can all sing and join in and stuff like that. And on the way in and on the way out, they all say good morning and happy Christmas to you, and occasionally shake a hand or get a posy of flowers or whatever sort of thing. So that's what we'll be
Oh,
doing. And then after that, we're going to go and have a picnic on Hunstanton Beach.
that sounds
My
absolutely
Christmas, that's
delightful.
what I'm doing for Christmas.
Well
What are
done
you
you.
doing?
That sounds great. I was about to commend you for being so mature at kind of being by yourselves for the first time. My parents were potentially going to have the same this year. And they completely threw their toys out of the pram and said, well, we will go to Spain then. And so we all had to sort of change our plans so that they're not completely by themselves on the 25th. So I will be with them. And thank you for showing your Christmas jumper. I'm pleased you did, because I get to do my favorite thing of the year, which if you see this completely plain black jumper that has Christmas puddings on the elbows. So that's my favorite Christmas joke. Every year, I've had this jumper for about 5 years. I wear it once a year, and I show up to a Christmas party and people say, why aren't you wearing a Christmas jumper? And I go, I am so embarrassed. And I turn around to walk away in shame, and then they get to see my little Christmas puddings.
Sorry, can we
So
see the Christmas pudding again, please? Can we
yeah,
just?
they're upside down this way, but there you go.
Oh yeah, they
A little
are.
bit of
They are.
extras.
So hilarious, hilarious.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
is
it's
good.
nice.
I like that. Nice subtle. I've gone all out, and you've gone subtle. That's
Very
nice. That
minimal,
probably
absolutely.
equalizes both you and me. So
Let's perhaps talk about what has been going on in the news in technology this week. David, what's caught your eye?
yeah. Well, I don't want to say that the CTO Lens podcast is setting trends or anything, Sophie, but last week we talked about AI smart glasses and the fact that Apple were leaning into that. Meta, I should say, rather not Apple. Meta were leaning into that and going for it big guns. And then surprise, surprise, Google, who had a much maligned launch a few years back. When was that? I don't know, 2013, Google Glass. Have come up with some plans to launch smart glasses powered by artificial intelligence in 2026. I'm not saying we encouraged them through our conversation to do that, Sophie. I'm just saying it's a large coincidence. That's all.
Yeah, I'm flattered to know that such important people in the technology world are not only listening to the podcast. And please, if you're listening, Mark Zuckerberg, anyone at Google, please do subscribe. You can be one of the 100 subscribers we're looking for. They're not only listening
Exactly.
to us, but they're changing their strategies based on what we talk about, which is it's really flattering. And as you say, it's interesting because there was a launch and it was about 10 years ago, and it didn't go particularly well, and it was all about are they actually useful and are they stylish? Is it something that people are going to use day in, day out? So I think it'll be really interesting to see with this second go and with what Meta are
Yeah.
doing, are they going to crack that sort of stylishness and usefulness challenge, either of them?
And I think what they're saying is, and Meta was saying this last week, and I think Google are saying this again, is that actually the original idea of a wearable, particularly somewhere where we already have wearables, as it were, in normal glasses, it was always destined to be a good market. It's just the tech actually wasn't there to back up the device, as it were. And now with AI, I think they're feeling it could. So yeah, I'm enthusiastic about that and glad that we led the conversation in the industry there, Sophie. So that's a good one for us.
Yeah.
But AI is not all it's cracked up to be all of the time, Sophie. Did you see this story about how Amazon Prime sort of used AI to do a recap of a TV show?
I did see this. This really, really made me laugh. I think because so what happened for anyone who didn't catch the news? There's a TV show called Fallout, which I do not watch, but apparently it's based on a video game, which already I think means it's going to be something fairly complex to follow. And they had used AI to generate a last time on Fallout summary, but actually a lot of the information that was in that summary was incorrect. And so viewers were left either confused or angry. And we did see people kind of responding to this. And I think, we have so many people nowadays who watch TV shows. They call it generously dual screen, but you're half watching a TV show and you're watching with your phone. So there's probably extra impact from not quite having a summary that's going to help you bridge the gap between episodes. But it made me laugh. It made me remember, and I think it was in January this year, the Apple News summaries, the sort of push notifications that came out on mobile saying, oh, breaking news, ... And that was using AI. And it's a feature that they actually retired because it kept on getting it wrong. My favorite examples were, for anyone who likes watching the darts, Luke Littler, who I think was the sort of prophetic 16-year-old who, absolutely amazing. Is he going to win the national world darts championship, whatever it is? And they had a notification saying he's won it. And the competition, was due to start later that afternoon. And I think Rafael Nadal came out as gay. Well, he didn't. He did in the notification. He didn't in real life. And so they said, well, this is a little bit dangerous. We think we're going to take the feature down. So, it's fun to get excited about AI and its potential, but important to check, what are the limitations, what are the challenges, and how are we monitoring this technology? How do we validate it before it goes live, but also how do we monitor it while it was live? Are you a Fallout watcher? Did you catch the summary?
I didn't. I'm not a fan of that particular game or genre, but yeah, no, I thought this whole hallucination thing and AI making stuff up, it's all just part of the technology. I can't get too excited about it. It's funny, I think, but it's not like no lives were lost in the making of this, recap, right? Sort of thing. It's quite
Yeah.
funny that one of the things that happened was it claimed that one scene was set 100 years earlier than it was. So that could be a bit sort of humorous, couldn't it? When you're watching it, it could confuse people. But I guess people just want their tech to work, right? We've learned that years
Yes.
ago. People just you're going to use tech, make sure it works. That's what people want. So yeah, so AI's got to get itself a little bit cleverer in certain areas. I'm sure, but there is a man who's going to help us with that, right? There is a man who's going to make sure that AI is brilliant. Have you read about this one? And do you know who the man is?
I think I can take a guess. Does he have orange hair and very small hands and a very long tie?
You could be right about that, Mr. Trump. So what's he saying now? He's saying that anybody else who's trying to regulate artificial intelligence at a state level within the US, and for those of you who have any business transactions with the US, will know that everything is done at a state level. There's definitely 50 odd versions of the US as far as I'm concerned. And he's saying, no, we'll do it all centrally. And I think some people are saying, then bloody do it, and others are saying, yeah, let's not do it. And there's lots and lots of interest about this. And the one for me that I think epitomizes this best is a quote from a policy director, Patrick Hedger, and it says, "We look forward to working with the White House and Congress to set nationwide standards and a clear rule book for innovators." That's the biggest oxymoron I've ever heard. Clear rule book for innovators. If innovators had a rule book, they wouldn't be innovators, would they? So I don't know. Do we need this regulation at all, Sophie? What do you think?
Oh, I think it's a really good question. And I mean, this is one of the big themes that we're talking about in technology and AI at the moment. What is the role of regulation? What is the role of the innovator who takes the responsibility? Do we even know how to regulate AI right now? I mean, we have seen a lot of harms come from AI, just general AI that people on the street are using, as well as sector specific AI. So I do believe there's a need for some form of control, whether that's regulation, what form the regulation needs to be in is something that's really still, for me, very much to be answered. But I think, is this really about regulation, or is it about, we know that Trump has a lot of very important friends and friends that have supported him in his political journey, and he likes to do things for those friends. And it's all about supporting the people you know. And one of the challenges with this regulation is that, will it support innovation? What types of innovation will it support? How many oligarchs are there who are really invested in these technologies succeeding? That actually, that's what it's driving at. So I think it's a real challenge, and particularly the controversy around this sort of state level. And as you say, sorry, non-state level, federal level. And as you say, so much is done at the state level, and there are so many reasons to have it that way. So I think there's a lot of discourse to be had around this particular development.
Yeah, and we know that Trump likes a bit of discourse, right? So,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
brings us to our final news topic of the day, which again, I've said it once at the start of this session, and I'll say it again. We are leading the way here, Sophie. We talk about it here, and stuff happens in the world, right? Last week we talked about quantum computing. And I showed my ignorance a little bit, probably willfully. And you were a little bit more positive and enthusiastic, having got friends in the industry who have lent into the quantum computing world. And lo and behold, a company called New Quantum, NU Quantum, raised a largest ever 60 million Series A financing for quantum computer networking. it's like probably the private equity companies who back that were listening to the CTO lens the week before, and off the back of our conversation decided that quantum computing was something to get into. That's not quite the quote that Dr. Carmen Palacios Berrectia has given us, but it's actually, she's been working on it for 7 years, so she probably feels it's a little bit different from just us. But I feel we were the icing on top of the cake there, right?
Yeah, I think there are definitely undertones coming through, it's really exciting for us. But no, I think this is a topic, it's really hotting up. I think there's a lot to be understood about the role that quantum will play in technology and when it's going to play that role. And I think it's something that you'll hear more from us here at London Tech Leaders. And, that'll be in podcast form, that'll be in event form. So, it's coming, it's heating up, but more to understand, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I'm
I'm just
reading the press article, and it's like it's all about it's going to be, it will be, it's going to solve this, it's going to do that. It doesn't actually really say too much, but it's a press release, so that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. We want to be excited. We don't necessarily need to know the details just yet.
All right, so that was the week in technology news. Thank you very much. When we come back, we're going to have a look at the topic of sitting down with your younger professional self and the kind of advice that you might give.
So thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for coming back. We're excited now to discuss the topic of sitting with your younger self. When we look back on our careers and we reflect, what do we learn? What would we say to ourselves if we could, go back and have a conversation with who we were, 20 or 30 years ago? So, David, you put a post on LinkedIn on this topic, didn't you? What did your post say and what was the response?
I mean, it was quite a reflective post for me, rather than my normal sort of like telling people how they should do stuff. It was much more me thinking about what I would say to my 30-year-old self. I said over a coffee, but it's much more like to have been a pint, but there you go. And I came up with a few things, and it triggered people, right? And then people started adding in their own things. So maybe you can chuck in a couple of your things, Sophie, right? The one thing that really stuck out, the first thing I wrote on this was stop trying to be the cleverest person in the room. So when you're young and believe yourself to be have some capability, a little bit of skill, a few opinions, not too shy. I've never suffered from shyness. Um, you think, well, I've got to tell somebody. I've got to prove this out to people, right? People need to know what is lying within my brain and my psyche and all that kind of stuff. And so, I would spend a lot of time telling people how great I was and how clever I was and all that kind of stuff. And the thing that you sort of don't know, and this is why I'd tell my younger self, is that either people kind of know and just brush over it and ignore it. It's like, yeah, we know why you're here. We know what you're capable of. And they tune out all of that bravado and all of that trying to prove yourself, and they just focus on working with his get a job done. Or it really turns people off, right? And they never do get to find out whether you have any skills or talent or ability, right? Because they're turned off by your, well, let's face it, arrogance, right? And so actually stopping trying to project as the cleverest person in the room is the first point. And then the second point is actually you might not be the cleverest person in the room, right? So I think so, and I think the funny thing is that over since I was sort of 30, I basically made a career out of not being the cleverest person in the room, but ensuring that the cleverest people are in the room. And so that's the slight difference. And again, there's a youthfulness in there. And, at 30, I was probably at the height of my arrogance, if I'm honest. I'd managed to father 2 children. My wife still loved me. I had a fast car, that all of those things contributed to my mindset, something like I'm invincible and all that kind of stuff. But actually, yeah, that's the one thing I would have told myself. Stop trying so bloody hard to prove to everybody that you're a genius. Quietly work away at it, and also assume there might be some people in the room who know a bit more about some of the stuff than you.
This really, really interests me, and it's so fascinating to hear you explain it in this way. And I think I have two perspectives on this. I think one, to the extent that I have, felt like I'm trying to prove that I'm the smartest person in the room previously in my career. I don't think I've done it that much. Maybe it's because I don't have a fast car. I can look into that connection. Almost for me, the learning has been stop trying to prove you're the smartest person in the room and just be as smart as you can in the room, because it's not about, sort of the optics and the bravado. Although I'll come back in a second and say that one of my learnings is optics do matter a little bit if we're playing the game of being practical. But really focusing on the mission, caring about the mission, doing everything you can to grow yourself and to have impact is really important. But I think the other side of this, and it's got to be such a personal thing. And this might be a sort of women working in tech where you're not necessarily always represented in senior leadership. You don't see yourself in the position that you find yourself in. Um, Almost for me, a learning would be, don't be too humble. Don't go into a room and assume that everyone else there has earned their place and you're the imposter. And there is some value in what you think and bring to the table, and you don't always have to assume that everyone else is correct. And you must have made some mistake, or they must have made some mistake putting you in the room. So I think there's probably a little bit of seesaw in. Okay, well, don't think too much of yourself, but don't think too little of yourself, and see if you can, kind of take a thoughtful approach that's almost lacking in that ego lens in the first place.
I think you're spot on, and it's no surprise, and this is a little stereotypical, but I've seen it and spoken to lots of women about this as well. It's no surprise that I started with the I'm too big-headed and arrogant and thinking a lot of myself, and I need to come down, and you started with a I'm not big-headed and arrogant enough because I've got these skills and I need to come up a bit, right? It is
Yeah.
often a male-female split in these senses, right? Sometimes it's just the males are a little bit dumb and are like, going, yeah, I could do that without any thought for whether they can do it or not. And sometimes that, depending on the tradition of their setup, in domestic life, they may not have as many things on their minds as some of our female colleagues who turn up for work, right? And so I think, some of that is confidence, some of that is consideration. And yeah, I think you're right. That we all need to balance ourselves in the middle. Turn up, be credible, put your best foot forward. Don't be too shy about that, but don't be an arrogant tosser about it either, right? And I think then we'd all find a happy medium there, right?
Absolutely.
So what else? What else, Sophie? If you were, with your professional younger self, we'll have to go back to what 12 for you to get the same number of years as I have to climb down from my age. But if you were, if when you were first starting out, a young kind of go getter, if you were talking to that person now, what advice would you give them?
It's a good question. I mean, there are so many little things. I think for me, one of the big things, and I think this was a theme that came up in your post as well, was learning when to say no and where to focus. And I think it's something that is a natural transition as we move from IC up into, management, and you become more strategic, and there are more things to kind of care about and worry about than you can possibly focus on. Moving into that space from your value is doing as many things to the highest quality possible. And so, kind of as you continue to grow, just sort of tap your old self on the shoulder and say, it's okay to get something wrong. It's okay to miss something. It's okay to say, this is my capacity that I'm comfortable with. And I'm going to, operate within this capacity, but I can't do everything. I definitely used to be very much a yes person, volunteering for tasks, first person. Yep, I'll do it. And kind of trying to build credit and almost social currency that way in work, as well as taking the learning opportunities, which are obviously very valuable. But, previously what was the more I do, the better. It's now the better and more strategic I can be at the things that I do. That's where my value comes from. I would rather do, one thing amazingly and really create value in an area that is itself a high value area than doing lots of tiny little bits that altogether might not add up to that much. And kind of balancing your energy in that sense as well. Is that a lesson that you feel you have looking back?
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, I'm a juggler, right? So I think it's sort of that could be role specific, Sophie, right? I mean, I'm we've established that I was promoted to my level of technical incompetence a long time ago, and I'm basically somebody who leads across a broad stretch of technology domain, right? I'm not particularly expert in any one area. And so I rely on those experts. If you are an expert, I can see that you need the kind of focus you're talking about, right? Or if you're setting up a particular kind of team or you're doing so. For me, I love the juggle, right? And so it's tempering doing each of those things that I juggle between with the right amount of depth and clarity whilst not
Mm,
burning myself out. And I get the burning yourself out thing. And I think actually the one thing here is to understand yourself. And so this is what, and I don't necessarily think if I'd said this to my 30-year-old self, it would have changed my trajectory, but it might for others because we've got this generation coming through who are in competition with each other in a way that perhaps we weren't when we were a little bit younger, because there were, more jobs and less of us, and now there's more of us and less jobs and stuff like that. So, and and basically they're working, longer, harder, more intense hours, expected to get more output, etc., etc. So I don't know if I felt that I was doing too much or spread too thinly when I was young. And I'm high energy and I like to juggle. So for me, if I was talking to my 30-year-old self, I wouldn't say do less.
Mm.
I might say make sure what you're doing is valuable and has meaning and purpose. Don't waste your time. But I wouldn't necessarily say slow down. I think there's a mindfulness thing in there about you, and that's a very personal thing, isn't it? Right? Be mindful of yourself and what you're capable of, and therefore don't overcommit. That resonates with me. I think. I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, I think you've described it well. I think the best way for me to conceptualize this, and this will work better for our listeners who are also watching the video. I worked with a colleague who many years ago said for her it was all about not living up here. And for anyone who's just listening, I'm squiggling my hands all about the very top of my head, and it's about taking a breath and living down here. And you kind of feel the energy more in your chest. It's not out controlled and buzzing all around you like a flock of bees. It's kind of sort of more paced and more thoughtful and more considered. And you can do just as much, but the approach you take to it is focused on value rather than just swatting the bees out of the way.
Yeah, I agree. The flip side of that is you could say yes a bit more, right? So I've had a very enjoyable career, been involved in some very interesting companies, projects, etc., etc. So I don't think I have regrets per se. But if I think hard, there were some opportunities I passed up on, perhaps because I didn't feel I was ready. Now, one of the things that, and this is, we've become quite specific about this in the world of which company you're working for. So, if you're a startup, you're working in a startup, they want you to be all in, but they're happy if you're a bit of a raw talent. They're not too worried about finesse, and we'll all learn together, but we're all gung ho. And so, if you're in an enterprise, let's not be rude to everybody in enterprise, but there's a lot of you about, and you can sort of like have a weakness in an area, knowing that somebody else will pick up that weakness and learn from that. And it's sort of you can build and develop over a longer period of time in a large enterprise, right? But recently, somebody said to me in regards to scale ups, particularly scale ups that have had a private equity company investment or purchase, is they only want people who can do the job, right? They
Mm,
they basically they haven't got time, and they don't want to spend the money developing people
mm,
and all that. Now that's a real challenge, because often a scale up has come from a startup where these people lived and breathed it and gave their all. And now you're saying, well, if you're not the best person I need for that role, then actually I need to pass on you, right? Sort of thing, and I need to bring somebody else in. So that has to be done with a little bit of respect and some humility and stuff like that. But the bottom line is that sometimes you need to be able to do the job. And so in that context, don't put yourself in a position where you can't do the job. But if you want to learn some stuff, if you're in an enterprise or a startup, I'd stick your hand up for anything, because it's
mm,
a learning experience, right? Just go, yeah, do more. I passed up on probably two significant career options when I was about 30 years old. One was I was at BT, working there, and one was I was at Sky. And I passed up on them because I thought, I don't know everything I need to know about this. I don't really have a frame of reference or the current experience. And sometimes it was a moment at BT. It was a real moment where a very senior executive in BT, I'd gone to take something to him, almost like a delivery boy sort of thing, right? From my project to his project. And he basically, he was asking me my opinion, how things were going in my project sort of thing. And I clearly said something with confidence to him. And he just went, do you think you could come and head up my part of that organization and do that for me here? He literally point blank just asked me 10 minutes after meeting me sort of thing. And I should have said yes, because history tells me I could have done, but I didn't know that at the time. So, for those who know me, unusual for me to have a momentary lap in confidence, but I didn't say yes, right? So I think, and that could have been something really fun and exciting. So yeah, don't be boastful. We've done that, but at the same time, get your confidence on sometimes. Is there anything that you've regretted in terms of a career decision or choice that you've made, Sophie?
Oh gosh, I'm not going to name names or companies. No, I think regret is really interesting because I have definitely had periods in particular roles where I've been extremely uncomfortable for many different reasons. And you sort of sit there on the day and you go, this was I've made a terrible decision. I'm cross at myself for making this bad decision. It feels bad to feel that way about yourself, but also to be in a situation that's just uncomfortable. And then you leave it a week, a month, 6 months, a year, and you look back and go, actually, that was an opportunity for me to grow and for me to learn. And there's so much that's floated around of, whatever happens in life, in work, in life, personally, whatever it might be, there's always a learning opportunity. And what's the phrase? It's not over till the fat lady sinks. So you can go through these really difficult periods and say, well, this is really bad, but there's always something you can take away from it. And I think that's really beautiful because it means that you're never really up the creek without a paddle. You're never completely screwed over. There's always something to take away. But are we looking at things with too sunny of a disposition? And actually, if you're in a position where it's really horrible, the learning is, I don't want to be in that position again. Who knows? But yeah, to answer your question directly, I've definitely had some temporary regrets, but sitting here and now, there's nothing that I would necessarily change about my career.
That's good. Yeah, well, what resonates with me is your use of the term temporary regrets,
Mm,
because absolutely I have no real solid regrets that niggle me today. But
yes.
at the time, you're like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that, or should have
Yeah.
done that, or whatever. Yeah, so no permanent regrets, but a few temporary regrets, and they're usually around joining or leaving a company. If I'm honest, that's
Yeah.
usually where they sit around. I've much to my wife's nerves. I've left companies. I think I've left 3 companies on a principle, right? Just because I didn't agree with something that was going on, either the leadership or the direction or how I was being treated or whatever. And so I've literally just resigned there and then on the spot. I've done that 3 times in my career, and every time I've come home with my tail between my legs, and my wife's like, "Oh, wait, yeah." Now I'm fortunate that I've managed to get out of work and stuff like that. But yeah, I sort of, you regret that momentarily. When the recruiter's not calling 5 minutes later the next day, you do regret things like that. But you never regret them long term because they make you the person you are, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Very philosophical.
Uh,
Um,
we're we're feeling deep and philosophical. We need to take this up again. I know, Sophie. Why don't we wrap this session? Wrap. Do you see what I did? Christmas wrap.
very nice.
And why don't we see if we can find the games master to have a little bit of fun in the mid-episode game?
Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. We are delighted to now bring you the mid-episode game. So our elf on a shelf, Luke, is here. Luke, what have you got for us this week?
I've actually got a little elf on a shelf,
Oh,
and yeah,
bless.
look at that, on demand. But no, this week we've got another fantastic game.
Guess the year.
So, David and Sophie, welcome to Guess the Year. This is a game designed to test your knowledge of the most significant technology releases in the last 25 years. So, what we are looking for today is for you guys to guess the year of significant technology events, releases of significant technological policies, or significant technological devices and consoles that you will definitely recognize. So, you get 2 points if you guess the year correctly, and then if neither of you guess the year correctly, you'll get 1 point for the nearest guess. Okay, so we're going to jump straight into it and start off with a very easy one, I imagine. So, David and Sophie, which year was the launch of the first iPhone? And we'll do ladies first on the guess of
Ah,
this one.
thank you so much. I think we each need a buzzer noise, and whoever does their buzzer first. So I'll answer this, and David, think about what you want your buzzer noise to be. It was 2007 or 2008. I'm going to say 2007.
Okay, David, your guess?
Well, I was actually around when this happened, so
So was it 1990?
yeah, 1990. No. So actually, I can remember a time before the iPhone very, very clearly because I was involved in producing all sorts of phones that did other things that were the precursor to this smartphone, but we called them smartphones at the time, but they weren't very smart. So that was 2000. We launched something in 2005. The iPhone wasn't around then. 2006. I'm going to say 2006.
Okay. The answer was 2007. So
Oh,
2
Oh,
points to Sophie.
I went
yeah.
Remember, it's currently 2-0 to David overall in games. So Sophie, you're off to a strong start. Question 2. When was the first release of Windows 95? David, you get to go first on this
Well,
one.
I'm feeling really old with this game. So I can remember because we got one. We had a photocopier room I worked for the government at the time, big long floor. We had a photocopier room. And in the photocopier room, they put in this PC and they installed Windows 95 on it. We used to have to book half-hour sessions on it. That's how long ago that was. And it wasn't, I would say that was, 93, 1993.
Okay, Sophie.
Yeah, I always thought it was Windows 95 because it came out in 1995, but I was a child at the time. I'm going to snuggle up next to David's answer and hope that you were down by just 1 year. So I'm going to say 1994. And yeah, I'm going to capture all of that top side.
Well, just to make you both feel a little bit older, I was not even born in 1995. So yeah, there you go. But the answer was actually the obvious 1995. So
No.
Sophie is the
Oh,
winner. Um, cool. YouTube has obviously played a major part in everyone's life. When was the first YouTube video uploaded? To let you know, it was me at the zoo and it went viral.
me at the zoo. Is this, I'm going
I'm
first
going
on
to
this
go
one?
first this
So
time so I don't get influenced by Sophie's answer.
Okay.
that's not how it usually goes, but I like how you took the lead on that one.
Yeah, 2000, 2004.
Okay, Sophie?
I want to say it's 2007. And I want to say that because when I was at university, I had a lot of friends who were really into old music from, before YouTube existed. And all of the videos of the old music were all from the same kind of year because that's when YouTube existed rather than when the music came from. I think that year was 2007, but I could be completely wrong. That's my guess. Let's stick with that, 2007.
The answer was 2005. So, David,
Oh,
you're on the board. 3-1. 3-1. Moving swiftly on. This is a real technical one. And again, before I was born, so who knows? Guido van Rossum released a language for readability called Python. This language was created in what year?
Now, you see,
I-
languages are always a lot earlier than you think.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you go, because you go with the common usage of the language, and then it turns out to be created in Roman times or something, right? Something. So,
Sophie, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I'm good. I was gonna go along that principle as well. I am going to go I'm gonna say 67.
I'm going for 78.
It was actually 1991. But
Oh.
David, you were closest, even though you were both quite far away. But it's okay. 3-2. He's back in the game. You can't let him do this again. In this year, there was the introduction of everyone's favorite GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. David, to go first on this one. What year did that come into play?
I'm going to say GDPR 2017.
Okay.
Oh gosh. I remember the company I was working in when it happened, and I remember before it happened and then after it happened and all of the stress that was associated with it. But there was a good number of years that could have happened. Was 2000? I think it's a little bit earlier. I'm gonna say 2016.
Oh, went very close, but it's 2018. So David brings it back to
Ah.
3-3.
Come on. Yeah.
The comeback is on. Right, we're going to go for your final question of the day. And this is to take all the points, unless you both get it spot on. And what I want you to do on this one, so neither of you can influence each other, I'd like you to write down your answer before you say it. If you can,
Okay.
even if that's on your phone or your laptop,
Okay.
get written down. So here we go. It's a big one.
Go.
We spoke about Python, but now we're going to talk about Java. So, in what year was the first release of Java?
Can I ask to be biased? Because I have no idea.
I wasn't born.
You weren't born, okay.
Well, that's a nice clue. It's a nice clue. Although he's
Oh.
only 12, so, you know, it's not like
Requires
Okay.
Sophie to remember my age.
Yeah.
See, I can remember going down and seeing the first product produced with Java. So that was a few years ago. Oh, blimey. You're joking, aren't you? I'm gonna say
Have we
oh,
both got answers written down?
no, not yet.
I've got
It's
two
late.
digits, 1 and 9, but I want to
If
think
you
of 2 more digits.
I've got an answer, but I don't like it. I don't like it. It's not a good answer.
Okay, I've got my answer.
Okay. Oh, 1987 versus
1986.
Oh, jeez. Only one in it, and you didn't even influence each other. Well, the answer is, unfortunately, 1995. So David is our winner for the third week in a row.
David.
We'll get some nice Christmas music in the background to celebrate his win.
Yeah, that would be great.
Congratulations,
Thank
David.
you, Sophie, for letting me win. That was obviously your Christmas present to me.
You are very welcome.
You're very welcome for the game also, but I will see you all next week.
Thanks, Games Master Elf. Bye.
Thanks, Elf. Bye. Okay, fantastic. So I will
mean,
now
come
have
on,
my tail
Sophie,
between my legs.
you gotta let me have that one. It was completely random. I'm a lot older than you, so there were a lot more dates for me to choose from. It's, you know.
I think, well, very, very well earned. The only thing that disappoints me is that if I toss my laptop in anger, I'm the only person who suffers. So I think I will make peace with the score.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I shan't be crowing about it much. I shall just put it on my local community Facebook page and tell all of my friends and family. Yeah, so that's good. Okay, so that
Fantastic.
was the mid-episode game. Another fantastic quiz where we shan't mention what the score is, but look forward to the next week's one. Let's move on. What should we talk about now? Well, we've got to one of our favourite sessions, which is the Disaster Diaries.
Yes.
And we're gonna have another listener, avid listener, has sent in one of their challenges that they've been having problems with. I think we agreed I'm going to read this one out, Sophie, and you're going to give us some comments on it, right?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm a new CTO 1 month in, and I'm realizing the hardest part isn't technology. It's the team culture I inherited. Teams don't trust each other, so they build guardrails instead of relationships. Stand-ups are theatre, decisions happen in side channels, processes are inconsistent. Some sacred, some ignored, often rewarding heroics over consistency. Code reviews are skipped, documentation avoided, and deployments are stressful events. Sounds awful. Junior engineers stay quiet, senior engineers act alone. Burnout quietly builds, with multiple engineers calling in sick. The CEO keeps asking me for a roadmap. The team asks me to give them a break. I see patterns under pressure, blame spreads faster than solutions, knowledge is hoarded, and small inefficiencies cascade into delays. Before fixing technology, I feel I must fix how we work together, which feels like biting off more than I can chew in my first ever CTO role. So the question that they're asking of you and I, Sophie, is when we first stepped into a CTO or senior tech leadership role, how did we overcome imposter syndrome and gain the confidence to implement your own ideas? I think it's clear that this person knows what good looks like because they're able to clearly highlight where they've got challenges and problems and sort of say what the bad stuff is. So I think they've probably worked in an organization that has had some good technology leadership before, right? But we've got a feel for this person. They're in their first CTO role, and we've talked about this in the past. You know, that's quite a big step up. It's quite a change of role and focus. And I'm definitely hearing a little bit of like, oh, I've bitten off more than I can chew. I've got a bit of imposter syndrome. Well, what do you think about this, Sophie? And have you ever felt similar yourself?
Oh gosh, I'm sure I have felt similarly, and I'm sure I've worked in environments that are just as challenging as this one. I mean, I think there's such a large part about for me in this about intention and personality. So for me, the first question is always going to be, what has happened, or rather, who has happened to lead to this culture becoming so widespread and so entrenched within the organization? I think for me, a lot of the environments I've worked in where you've come across a really toxic dynamic like this, there have been toxic people. And so coming in as a new individual, you have an opportunity to say, I am a new person. I'm going to do things in a new way. That's always, I think, for me, a real advantage. And as you've mentioned, it sounds like this person has worked in environments where things have been much healthier. And I think that's something to really lean back on when you start to feel a little bit of imposter syndrome and, I don't know what I'm doing, but you know what you're doing enough to recognize that this is not healthy, but something you've seen before is healthy. And you can always be thoughtful about what you have seen previously and sit down and go, well, I've seen that work really well. Can I thoughtfully introduce it to a new environment? And obviously, you don't want to use a blunt tool. You don't want to say, we did this here and it worked, therefore it is automatically an appropriate situation to use in this new environment.
Mm.
But you can go to your team and say, listen, I know you guys aren't happy. This isn't working. I have good intentions to support as best I can. I'm a human being. Showing that vulnerability goes so, so far. And to sort of come in and go, well, here's an idea that I have, and I'm going to bring it to the table, but I'm going to listen. And I'm going to listen to you in terms of, as a team, what do you like? What works well for you? What are you observing? What's not working at the moment? For me, it's never really a question of gaining the confidence to implement your own ideas. It's more about gaining the confidence to bring something to the table, to co-develop with the rest of your company and the rest of your team. As supported by those good intentions, I find it's quite hard to go wrong if you really show that you're coming from the right place. For me, a big question here is also, what support do you have from the rest of the C-suite? Is this something that the CTO is really very much doing by themselves? Or is there a wider ambition within the organization and the leadership of the organization to get things to a healthier place? What about you, David? Have you experienced a situation like this before? And particularly as someone who's spent time in the C-suite, if you have experienced it, have you felt alone, or have you had the support of your peers?
So I have, and I'll come to that. And I think what you just outlined is what I would call a good, solid playbook for how to engage with a troublesome team, right? Who aren't
Mhm.
necessarily where the company needs them to be. Maybe the stakeholders aren't as well. And you just outlined it. I couldn't have said it more perfectly, Sophie. But I'm going to be controversial. I
Please do.
don't think this person should be doing this job, right?
Mm.
I think that for their first gig, the CEO or whoever it was who recruited them into this role has made a mistake, right? Given the complexity that they've outlined for us, and it doesn't mean they can't see what good should look like, but I just think they've been set up to fail in their first ever C-suite role. As we've discussed in one of our previous podcasts, making that move from senior technology person, manager, whatever, enterprise architect, blah, 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 into the C-suite role as a technology leader is hard enough as it is. You have to learn a whole bunch of new skills. To inherit an underperforming team who have got cultural challenges, all kind of stuff, it's almost like, so we'd like you to step up into this brand new shiny thing that you've never done before, and we're going to make it as hard as bloody possible for you,
Mm.
right? I think the CEO shouldn't have hired this individual because I think they've set them up to fail. Now, that's my controversial view, and I feel sorry for this person. It's not very helpful to this individual, but I think actually, if I and therefore I come back that if you're there, then I think the playbook you just outlined is the way to go, right? I've been put in a number of interesting situations like this before. I don't think I have, and this is why I think that's the right advice to not have been put into that role. I don't think I've ever been put into a senior role where I wasn't, I didn't have a good team, right? I think I've had the kind of bosses who knew me enough to be able to say, right, Dave can go over there, learn a new set of skills and move on. So I think that was when it was probably before I was in the C-suite though, right? So slightly different. My first C-suite role, where I actually carried the C-suite title, was a complete travesty of integration into the role, right? It was absolutely awful. I shan't name the company or any of the individuals involved, but basically the CEO knew something wasn't right with the current technology provision that he had. The CEO wasn't enough of a technologist or a technology organization process person to know whether it was the CTO who was, not leading his team correctly, or whether the team were all like messing it up and the CTO just
Mm.
needed a better team. And so somebody recommended me, which is always the best way. And I came along, and he said, "Would you mind, going in there and assessing the situation for me?" And I said, "Yeah. How would you like me to do that?" And he said, "Well, I'd like to go and meet the CTO and talk to that person." So I went and met the CTO, and it was sort of like, when I got there, it was clearly like a job interview. So the CTO was sort of interviewing me for a job that I hadn't applied for, and I didn't know what the job was, right? So thing.
Uh,
And basically what happened is that the CEO afterwards got a good report from the CTO about me, and then said to me, "Right, I'd like you to go in as the deputy CTO." And I went, "Oh,
wow.
okay. So I'm going in to help everybody here. This is all right. A deputy CTO. That was my first sort of C-suite role,
Yeah.
right? Not even quite the top dog. So I felt comfortable about that. And then on the second day, I met the CEO, and he said, "How's it going?" And I said, "Yeah, we're just getting into it." And he said, "Right." He said, "In the next 2 weeks, I want you to report back to me privately and tell me whether it's the CTO or the team." And it
Wow.
literally that was my mission. So I was there to basically uncover who the problem was. And unfortunately, and like I say, no names, no pack drill, it became very clear very quickly it was the CTO. He'd lost the
Wow.
changing room. He cocked it up. He was a capable individual, but he just lost the changing room, and he wasn't managed, and he wasn't going to be able to recover the situation. And 2 weeks later, he left. I mean, he'd got a wad of money in his back pocket, so I don't think he was crying, but he left, and I was just like, wow, what? And I became the CTO. What an introduction to the C-suite! My very first C-suite role. So it happens that you get a bit shafted. It happens you get dropped in at the deep end a little bit, and you have to sort of swim. It was very interesting, and every single other C-suite role I've been placed in has been easier since then.
Mm. There you go. Wow. Well, it sounds like you had a real baptism of fire, and talk about a learning experience. I mean, it's an important question to ask, because we read these stories that people have sent in, and we make comments, but there are real people behind these stories with real challenges who can benefit from advice from potentially from us, other people. There's lots of information out there, and it's a scary thing to hear, of potentially there's a mistake, and potentially this isn't the best position you'll be in. And in your example, as you said, that CTO wasn't going to be able to, and ultimately didn't recover that situation. So yeah, whoever sent this in, again, it was anonymous. We wish you the very best. Hopefully the playbook might help thinking about long term. Is this the right position to be in? What are your options more broadly? Hopefully might help as well. But Godspeed.
For sure. For sure. For sure. Anyway, hopefully that was a useful piece of advice to our listener who wrote in, but also to anybody else. We are looking for more of those Disaster Diaries to come in, and hopefully Sophie and I just talking them through and sharing a bit of our own experience, will help others to feel that they're not alone, and that we all have challenges as we go through our career. These lumps and bumps are perfectly normal, and we're happy people now, right, Sophie? So we get over them, we get
Yeah,
past them, we grow, we
absolutely.
learn, and we move on. Okay, so that's another great week of chatting through a number of things. I don't know if anything particularly resonated with you this week, Sophie.
I'm still what's the word I'm looking for? I'm still recovering from having lost 3 games in 3 episodes. So I think that's the thing that's first and foremost in mind for me. But also, some amazing stuff going on in the news, and particularly it seems to be there are some themes that we're talking about, and then people are continuing to talk about them, and lots of developments around smart glasses and quantum and AI. So it feels like a really exciting time to be in tech at the moment. And really fascinating to sort of think about what advice would we give to our former selves, and what advice have we given to this poor person who's really struggling with their culture in a first CTO role. So it's been an interesting week, but I'm going to give myself a little bit of time. I'm not a smoker, but I think I need to step outside and have a cigarette just to get over losing that game again 3 times in 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, I mean, you'll get there, Sophie. I mean, it's you've probably got longevity when it comes to stamina. I will burn out very soon, Sophie. Right? It's
I
just
will wait for
been
that
bad
moment.
luck so far, I think, is the answer. So listen, thank you everybody for joining me and Sophie for another week. A little bit of a Christmassy themed week this week. Hopefully you enjoyed the stuff that we talked about. If you did, please go and find us on whatever podcast or YouTube you want to join. And remember our challenge: we'd like a Christmas present for 100 subscribers. So you've got another sort of, I don't know, about 9 days to get us in there before Sophie and I open up our stockings on Christmas morning and find the 100 subscriber mark has been reached. Thanks very much for joining me again, Sophie.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us.